Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 169, A Hot Water Battle. The episode begins with Ash and the gang deciding to take a little break in a tropical jungle that they had stumbled upon, when they suddenly notice a Mankey and two Aipom in a tree. They were eating bananas, and with Ash being the hungry bastard that he was, he wanted the bananas too. So he went up to the tree that Mankey and Aipom were at to go and get them, but he slipped on a loose banana peel that one of the Aipom had dropped, and as a result, he fell into a nearby lake. As Brock and Misty make their way towards Ash, they make fun of him for his little fucking blunder, but Brock slips on the same peel as he was going up to Ash, causing him to fall into the lake as well. Brock and Ash soon discover, by the temperature of the water though, that it was not a lake, it was a hot spring, so they take the opportunity to fucking relax, baby. It was warm water. They soon realize that they were still in their clothes though, so they're like, hey, maybe we should probably get out and dry them so that we don't have to walk back naked when we're done. But Brock and Misty are like, Ash, we should relax here. We don't even really need to go back right now. Like, this place is so nice, we might as well take advantage of it. And Ash agrees, and decides to let out all of his Pokemon to relax as well. And I mean all of his Pokemon. And Misty and Brock do the same. Ash then decides that they should all play a fun game of keep the ball in the air. Remember that game? You either do it with a ball or a balloon, something like that. Yeah, he plays that with all the Pokemon, and Psyduck unfortunately fails to hit it immediately, so Pikachu goes in instead. Pikachu hits it to Chikorita, who hits it so hard that Totodile is forced to hit it with its tail before it flies out of his reach, and in the process, Totodile accidentally hits Cyndaquil in the face since he couldn't control his tail. The ball unfortunately bounces off of Cyndaquil's face, sending it flying away to parts unknown. Cyndaquil, Chikorita, and Totodile all proceed to blame each other and get into a fight over who caused the ball to go flying, since they all played a part in some way, even though I think it was obviously Totodile's fault. But Ash just mistakes his Pokemon fighting as them being playful with each other, although Misty recognizes that they were fucking fuming at each other. But Ash denies this, not thinking that his Pokemon could possibly hate each other, so he decides to try and prove Misty wrong by having Totodile, Cyndaquil, and Chikorita show off their professional teamwork by going to retrieve the ball. Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil all oblige as they go deep into the jungle to find the ball. Chikorita spots it, but finds that one of the Aipom from earlier was playing with it. Chikorita tries to politely ask for the ball, but the Aipom's a cunt, so it angrily refuses to give it to her. As a result, Chikorita goes to attack the Aipom, with Cyndaquil and Totodile jumping in as well, as Totodile manages to try and get the first hit by going for a bite. However, Aipom dodged the attack, and it caused Totodile to go flying into a tree, since it was so focused on trying to bite that it wasn't even watching where it was going. Fucking idiot. But anyways, Totodile bumping into this tree causes several other Aipom to fall down from it, and they're very angry from being knocked down, so they proceed to use Sand Attack on Totodile, burying him in sand, followed by Chikorita and Cyndaquil as well. This just led Chikorita to get pissed off at the Aipom, so she angrily made her way out of the sand and told Cyndaquil to face its back toward the Aipom. Cyndaquil was confused, but it did so anyways, leading Chikorita to hit Cyndaquil on the head with her leaf, which frightened him enough where his flame was able to ignite, and this flame scared the Aipom. But here's a question. I thought Cyndaquil could light up its flame on its own now. Maybe it still needed just, a little bit of help, especially after all the relaxation it just had. That's my excuse. Or Cyndaquil simply did light it up in command, and it simply just lit it up so that it could defend itself. That's probably what happened. Anyways, with the Aipom now having ran away, still with the beach ball that Cyndaquil, Totodile, and Chikorita were looking for, the three Pokemon chased after the Aipom. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they were in this jungle area as well, because, they always seem to be trailing Ash and the gang, and thankfully for them, they had actually found some food this time, being some tropical fruit, and they were eating it and very much enjoying it. However, Jessie wasn't satisfied with this. She wanted to go to a hot spring and enjoy some true fine dining at a tropical resort. James and Meowth agreed, although Meowth was worried that the tropical water would make him cold, with Jessie just reassuring him that they didn't have to go into the water, they could go into a hot spring. Upon hearing about a hot spring, Wobbuffet eagerly pops out of its own Pokeball, wanting to join in, and Jessie actually reluctantly decides that if they did come across a hot spring, then she would actually let Wobbuffet come along, because she was just in a good mood at this point, because she knew that they would likely come up across a hot spring very soon, since a tropical jungle usually meant a hot spring. As Team Rocket continued to daydream about all of the things they were going to do while in the tropical jungle, their fantasies were then interrupted as they were run over by the running Aipom, as well as Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil, who were still trailing them. Team Rocket were initially distracted by the fact that the Aipom had taken all of their delicious fruit. They finally had some food, and the Aipom had stolen them. But then, when they remembered that Totodile, Chikorita, and Cyndaquil had run past them, they came to the conclusion that those were likely Ash's, Totodile, Chikorita, and Cyndaquil, and that must have meant that Ash and the gang were in the area as well, with James suggesting that they likely had the same intention to go to the hot springs as they did. Jessie then gets the idea to go after Cyndaquil, Totodile, and Chikorita and capture them while Ash and the gang weren't nearby. James agrees with this, but also adds that they could simply trail Cyndaquil, Chikorita, and Totodile, as they would eventually lead back to Ash and the gang, and then they could try and steal all of their Pokemon. Jessie thinks that this is the better idea, so they proceed to follow where the Aipom, Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil had went off to, including a cave. That's right, the Aipom had ran into a cave in an attempt to escape Cyndaquil, Totodile, and Chikorita, and they were almost able to run them off, as Cyndaquil was too scared to go into the dark cave. However, Chikorita forced him to against his will, wanting to get that fucking ball back. Team Rocket were a bit late getting into the cave, as James had stopped by to pick up some more fruit along the way, still being hungry as fuck, and being angry at the Aipom for taking their previous food. However, grabbing this food proved to be a huge mistake, as when they finally arrived at the entrance to the cave to chase after Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil, James had alerted the attention of a nearby Snorlax, as it had smelled the fruit. Jessie orders her Wobbuffet to do something to attack the Snorlax, but it couldn't do anything as, it only knew counter, and apparently Bide, as it tried to charge up a Bide, but this obviously didn't work either, as Bide was a useless ass attack. Why didn't Jessie recall Wobbuffet into his Pokeball at this point? I don't know. Maybe she just expected him to, take a hit for them by accident or something. Anyways, even though James was reluctant, he feared for his life upon seeing the Snorlax, so he decided to give up the fruit he had just collected, leaving it at the cave entrance for Snorlax to snack on, as Team Rocket ran inside the cave, both to find Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil, and to hide from the Snorlax. However, the Snorlax immediately bites all of the fruit and eats it all, falling asleep as a result, and when it falls asleep, it falls over and blocks the cave entrance. Team Rocket realizes this, and now panic, as even if they found Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil, they now had no way out of the cave. Team Rocket decides that their priority number one should be trying to find an exit to the cave, so they decide to split up to cover more ground. Meanwhile, Cyndaquil, Totodile, and Chikorita had decided to split up as well so they could cover more ground, so that they could find the Aipom more easily, as they did not know where the Aipom had went off to in the cave. This means that Totodile was now separated from Chikorita and Cyndaquil, who were still searching together, and Meowth was separated from Jessie and James. This led Meowth and Totodile to encounter each other, as they had found the same dead end. Upon seeing Totodile, Meowth takes the opportunity to try and catch him in a net. Don't question where the net came from, but before he can do so, Snorlax had begun moving in its sleep, which was causing a whole bunch of cave-ins. These cave-ins start throwing Meowth and Totodile off balance, and then a rock starts to fall from the top of the cave, and it's about to hit Meowth on the head, but thankfully, Totodile jumps in at the last second and saves him. Why does Ash's Pokemon always save Team Rocket, man? They should just let them die. Meowth even questioned this, with Totodile telling him that he saved him because he felt bad for a fellow Pokemon. Meowth is pleased by this, especially at the fact that Ash's Pokemon would willingly put aside what their trainer may want them to do just to save a fellow Pokemon. However, Meowth's happiness is soon immediately interrupted as he noticed that the cave-ins had caused him and Totodile to become trapped by a whole bunch of rocks. Totodile is able to move them away a bit with his water gun, but he's not able to break them, so they were effectively still trapped, much to Meowth's annoyance. Meanwhile, as for Chikorita and Cyndaquil, Cyndaquil was using its flame to make the cave a lot easier to traverse through, but they still couldn't find a way out. They try their best to reunite with Totodile, but they can't find him now, obviously, due to him being trapped, so they begin to get worried. Just then, Snorlax begins to move in its sleep once again, causing even more cave-ins and stones to fall as a result, but thankfully, Chikorita and Cyndaquil are able to dodge them, and even more thankfully, they then suddenly hear Totodile still attempting to use its water gun to break through the rocks. Chikorita and Cyndaquil approach the other side of these rocks and see how they were wet, and determine that Totodile must be behind them, so Chikorita tackles the rocks, actually managing to break them, and freeing Totodile and Meowth as a result, as Cyndaquil and Chikorita happily reunite with Totodile, and Meowth is still there too, I guess. Speaking of Meowth, he instantly questioned Cyndaquil and Chikorita if they had saw Jessie and James, as, he wanted to reunite with them as well, but when Cyndaquil and Chikorita confirmed that they hadn't saw them, this leads Meowth to assume that maybe they had abandoned him. Although, who fucking knows, man, maybe they were just lost too. Upon seeing Meowth's sadness on how Jessie and James may have forgotten him, Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil all give Meowth a group hug, leading Meowth to cheer up a little bit, as he realized that maybe Ash's Pokemon weren't so bad. Meanwhile, speaking of Jessie and James, they were able to simply break out of the cave using their hands to break some rocks to form an exit. Damn, I didn't know they were that powerful. But unfortunately for them, the Aipom had already managed to escape the cave somehow as well. They must have even got out before it started caving in, and as soon as the Aipom spotted Jessie and James, they began to throw rocks on them, and a coconut. Jessie and James try and escape onto a tree, but they're unable to avoid the pelting rocks, as they simply beg the Aipom to stop. Meanwhile, back inside the cave, Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil, now that they were reunited, took the opportunity to apologize to each other for blaming each other for all this bullshit, and when Meowth observes it, he realizes that Ash's Pokemon argued sometimes like him, Jessie, and James did, acknowledging that they were still able to function as a fair team, even with these fighting moments, unlike him, Jessie, and James. Just then, Chikorita's leaf on her head starts blowing, indicating that there was wind nearby, which meant that there had to be an opening that they could escape through if wind was coming in. They managed to find the exit, but it was still heavily blocked off by a whole bunch of rocks, just barely having enough room for wind to come through the cracks. So this meant that Totodile still had to use its water gun to try and push away at some of the rocks. Cyndaquil and Chikorita tried to help by actually pushing the rocks, just not with an attack. And they managed to break through, only to find that they still couldn't get out because they had just arrived back at the main entrance to the cave, which was currently blocked by Snorlax sleeping. Meanwhile, as for Ash and the gang, they were still relaxing and having fun in the pool when they suddenly realized, or not pool, fucking hot spring, when they suddenly realized that Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil still hadn't come back, so they're like, oh shit, we have to go looking for them. Anyways, back with Chikorita, Totodile, Cyndaquil, and Meowth, Chikorita was trying to get the Snorlax to move by tickling it with her leaf, but it wasn't working. Totodile tried to bite it, that didn't work either. However, when Cyndaquil used Flamethrower, it had woke Snorlax up, causing him to move away and freeing the entrance once again. Yay! Chikorita, Cyndaquil, and Totodile happily began to try and make their way back to Ash, only to be caught in a net by Meowth, who claimed that even though he was grateful for everything the starter trio had done for him, he was still a Team Rocket member, and he had realized that he had to stay loyal to Jessie and James. Fucking Meowth, man, I hate you. Thankfully, though, because it was woken up, Snorlax was extremely bitchy, so it wanted to kill someone. Meowth tried to get it to kill Chikorita, Cyndaquil, and Totodile by saying that they were the ones who woke it up, but Snorlax thankfully believes Cyndaquil, Chikorita, and Totodile when they try and tell him that Meowth was the one responsible, so Meowth ends up being the one chased. Meowth tries to escape back into the cave, leaving Snorlax to run right into the cave, obviously not being able to get in, but its impact with the cave causes a wave by the water that the Aipom and Team Rocket were by to rise up from the ocean, because Snorlax was just that fucking heavy, and this wave begins to carry Team Rocket with them, with the wave, as Aipom managed to run away. The wave eventually makes its way inside the cave, due to it being so close to it, and it goes all the way through until it reaches the other side, where it picks up Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil after already picking up Meowth and Snorlax. The force of the wave causes the net to break that was holding Totodile, Cyndaquil, and Chikorita captive, so this meant that they were all able to grab Snorlax as he floated along with the wave, since he was too fat to sink, so they essentially used Snorlax as a flotation device. Meanwhile, Ash and the gang had began looking for Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil, and they obviously saw this huge-ass wave approaching, along with Snorlax and Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil holding on. Ash, being the good trainer that he was, instantly wanted to jump in and save his Pokemon, but Misty and Brock were like, no man, you'll just get swept away in the wave too, it's way too powerful. This leaves Ash unable to do anything, as him and the gang, as well as Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil for that matter, see that Snorlax is heading straight for a goddamn waterfall, so they were going to fall off the waterfall and die. Unless Chikorita did something, so it used Razor Leaf to cut down 2 nearby trees, and then Totodile, Cyndaquil, and Chikorita all grabbed onto each other, and with Totodile's bite and Chikorita's Vine Whip, they were able to grab onto one of the fallen trees, jumping off of Snorlax, before they went off the waterfall. Using the cut down tree, they're able to float away from the waterfall, being able to move the tree due to its lesser weight. And they were able to reach land where Ash had met them after running along the riverbank, and he immediately grabs his Pokemon off the tree and hugs them. Totodile was very fucking tired at this point, as it had to fucking bite a tree for minutes on end. After Ash tells them to never go out by themselves again, telling them how sorry he was that he forced them to do that, he then pulls out another beach ball from seemingly nowhere, because what happened to the one that the Aipom took, I have no fucking clue, because they never retrieved it, but I guess Ash had another one, because before the episode ended, they played one more game of ball, with all of Ash's other Pokemon. Nice. We then see one last scene from Team Rocket, who were still being ridden away in the wave, along with Snorlax still, and they had actually done what Chikorita, Totodile, and Cyndaquil did, which was grabbing onto Snorlax as a flotation device, as Jessie complained about how she said that she wanted to be in the water, but she meant a hot spring, not a goddamn cold pool. Also, Meowth had reunited with Team Rocket by this point, due to also being dragged by the water, if you remembered, so he realized that Team Rocket didn't abandon him. Nice for him, I guess. The episode then ends with Team Rocket noticing how they were approaching a waterfall, and try to climb aboard Snorlax so that he could fall off the waterfall and break their fall in a way, but when they try to do so, Snorlax then suddenly manages to turn around and swim upstream, which causes Team Rocket to lose their grip and go flying backwards down the waterfall. Damn. That Snorlax was powerful if it could fight the wave and fucking change direction.